just a housewife. Those 3 words echoed through the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel, seeming to bounce off every crystal chandelier and polished marble surface. I stood there, champagne glass frozen halfway to my lips, watching my husband of 15 years laugh with his colleagues as he delivered the punchline that reduced my entire existence to a joke. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the casual way Rich said them, as if he were stating an obvious fact, rather than driving a dagger through my heart. My name is Claire Morgan, and that moment at my husband's company Christmas party became the catalyst that would transform not just my life, but the lives of countless other women who society had relegated to the shadows of their successful husbands. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how it all began, to the years of quiet preparation that would make this night more than just another painful memory. I met Rich Morgan during my final year of business school. He was charming, ambitious, and spoke about changing the world through innovative technology. I fell in love not just with him, but with his dreams. When he started his tech career, we made a decision together. I would support his rise through the corporate ranks while quietly building something of my own. "We're a team," he'd said back then, his eyes bright with promises. "Your success is my success." 15 years is a long time to watch someone forget their own words. I'd spent those years managing our investments, studying market trends, and gradually acquiring ownership in strategic companies while maintaining the perfect corporate wife facade. My best friend Vanessa Chen, a brilliant venture capitalist, had been my guide and confidant through it all. "You're not just managing a household, Claire," she'd remind me during our late-night strategy sessions. "You're building an empire." The morning of the Christmas party, I'd closed my biggest acquisition yet, a controlling interest in Westminster Technologies, the very company where Rich had recently been promoted to vice president of operations. Eleanor Westminster, the aging founder, had recognized in me something she'd seen in herself decades ago. "They'll never see you coming, dear," she'd said as we signed the papers, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "That's our greatest advantage." I'd planned to tell Rich that night, to finally reveal that while he'd been climbing the corporate ladder, I'd been building my own stairway to success. But then came that moment, that casual dismissal of everything I was. "Oh, Claire, she's just a housewife, but she makes a mean pot roast." The laughter that followed felt like acid on my skin. Victoria Hayes, Rich's ambitious coworker who'd been trying to catch his eye for months, jumped in with false sympathy. It must be so fulfilling. Keeping house while the rest of us tackle the business world. Her designer dress and perfectly manicured smile couldn't mask the condescension in her voice. I felt Dr. Margaret Sullivan's hand on my arm, my mentor from business school who'd now become a close friend. "Remember," she whispered, "timing is everything in both business and revenge." She was right, of course. She'd been right 15 years ago when she'd first encouraged me to play the long game. Standing there in my carefully chosen black dress, I thought about the ownership papers sitting in my clutch, about the board meeting scheduled for Monday morning where Eleanor would announce her retirement and name her successor, about the look that would appear on Rich's face when he realized that his just a housewife was about to become his boss. But first, I had a story to tell. A story about underestimation, about patience, and about the quiet power of women who are seen but not heard. A story that would inspire others to unveil their own hidden strengths. The drive home from the Westbrook Hotel that night was silent, heavy with unspoken words. Rich sat in the driver's seat, loosening his tie, still riding the high of his successful networking evening. He had no idea that in my clutch, just inches away, sat papers that could reshape his entire world. I watched the city lights blur past, remembering the path that had led us here. 15 years ago, I'd graduated at the top of my class from Wharton Business School. While my classmates rushed into high-powered positions at Fortune 500 companies, I chose a different route. My father, a shrewd investment banker, had taught me the power of patient strategy. The best victories, he'd say, are the ones they never see coming. Before his passing, he'd left me with a modest inheritance and a lifetime of business wisdom. I met Rich at a startup conference where I was scouting investment opportunities. He was presenting his ideas for revolutionary supply chain management software, his enthusiasm infectious. That same week, I made 2 investments, one in his potential and another in a small tech company that would later become crucial to my plan. The early years of our marriage were a careful dance. While Rich built his reputation in the corporate world, I crafted the perfect image of a supportive wife. I hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, organized charity events that put him in front of the right people, and maintained our social connections with precision. But beneath that polished surface, I was building something of my own. Every morning, after Rich left for work, I would transform our home office into a command center. Vanessa would arrive with market reports and investment opportunities. "You're playing chess while they're playing checkers," she'd say, reviewing my latest acquisitions. Through carefully structured shell companies and strategic investments, I was quietly acquiring controlling interests in key technology firms. Dr. Sullivan's guidance was invaluable during these years. She'd recognized my potential in business, school, and had become more than a mentor. She was my strategic advisor. The corporate world underestimates the power of domestic intelligence, she'd observed during one of our lunch meetings. Every dinner party conversation, every casual remark at a charity event, it's all valuable market intelligence. I used this intelligence well. When Rich mentioned his company was exploring acquisition targets, I was already 3 steps ahead. While he saw me planning dinner parties, I was actually orchestrating boardroom coups. The housewife hobby of gardening he so often teased me about? Those garden club meetings were actually strategic planning sessions with some of the most influential women in the business world. Eleanor Westminster had been the first to see through my carefully constructed facade. At a charity gala 4 years ago, while everyone else was discussing flower arrangements, she'd cornered me by the champagne fountain. "My dear," she'd said, her eyes sharp despite her advanced age, "I believe we share more than just a passion for hybrid roses." That conversation had laid the groundwork for what would become my most ambitious move yet. The next morning after the Christmas party, I maintained my usual routine. Rich nursed his hangover with the artisanal coffee I'd prepared, completely unaware that I'd spent the early hours in conference calls with Tokyo and London. "Great party last night," he mumbled, scrolling through his phone. "Though you disappeared early? One of your headaches again?" I smiled, serving him his favorite breakfast. "Something like that," I replied, thinking of the real reason, an urgent call from Eleanor confirming the final details of our plan. As I watched Rich leave for work, briefcase in hand and confidence in his step, I thought about the lessons I'd learned from my father, from Dr. Sullivan, from Eleanor, and from every woman who'd been dismissed as just a housewife. Vanessa arrived exactly 30 minutes later, carrying a stack of documents and her signature determined expression. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, spreading the papers across our kitchen island, the same space where I'd supposedly spent my days planning menus and household budgets. I picked up the most important document, the final ownership transfer that would give me controlling interest in Westminster Technologies. Years of careful planning, strategic investments, and patient maneuvering had led to this moment. While Rich had been climbing the corporate ladder, I'd been building my own empire, one careful investment at a time. Through the kitchen window, I could see our carefully tended garden, the one Rich thought was just my hobby. Each flower bed represented a different investment, each carefully planned and nurtured. The rose garden he'd teased me about spending too much money on? Those expenses had actually been consulting fees for some of the best financial advisors in the country. The greenhouse that he thought was my midlife crisis purchase? a secure meeting space with military-grade privacy protection. The board meeting is scheduled for Monday, Vanessa reminded me, her voice pulling me back to the present. Eleanor's retirement announcement will be first, followed by the revelation of the new majority shareholder. She paused, studying my face. Are you sure you don't want to warn him? I thought back to last night, to Rich's casual dismissal of my existence, to Victoria Hayes's condescending smile, to all the years of being patted on the head and dismissed as just a housewife. No, I replied, gathering the papers into my portfolio. I think it's time for a lesson in underestimating women. The weekend before the board meeting stretched out like an elegant chess game. Every move had to be precise, every reaction calculated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Rich spent Saturday morning at the country club, networking with other executives who had no idea their comfortable world was about to shift beneath their feet. I used this time to meet Eleanor at her private estate, a sprawling mansion that had hosted countless secret business dealings over the decades. Eleanor's library smelled of old books and power. Afternoon sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across the antique desk where she'd built her technology empire. The timing couldn't be better, she said, pouring tea into delicate cups that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Richard's latest project proposal crossed my desk yesterday. Quite ambitious, wanting to restructure our entire Asian division. I stirred my tea slowly, savoring the irony. He's been working on that proposal for months, practicing his presentation in his home office every night. What Rich didn't know was that I'd already reviewed every detail of his plan, finding both its potential and its flaws. The real restructuring proposal, the one I'd developed with Eleanor's guidance, was far more comprehensive. Victoria Hayes chose that moment to make her presence known, striding into Eleanor's library as if she owned it. As Rich's project coordinator, she'd been invited to this preliminary meeting, though her expression suggested she'd rather be anywhere else than spending her weekend reviewing business strategies. "Mrs. Morgan," she said, her surprise at seeing me poorly concealed. "I didn't expect to find you here. Eleanor, I brought those quarterly projections you requested." The stack of papers she carried rustled importantly as she moved toward the desk. Eleanor's smile carried decades of practiced patience. "Claire has been instrumental in developing our new international strategy, Victoria. In fact, she's been consulting with us for quite some time." The look of confusion on Victoria's face was priceless, her perfectly manicured hands clutching. Her reports a bit tighter. "Consulting? But I thought..." Victoria's voice trailed off as Eleanor began spreading out a different set of documents, my documents, across the desk. Market analyses, strategic projections, and restructuring. Plans that made Victoria's reports look like elementary school homework. "You thought I spent my days arranging flowers and planning dinner parties?" I finished for her, keeping my voice gentle. That's exactly what everyone was supposed to think. The color draining from Victoria's face suggested she was beginning to understand just how badly she'd underestimated the situation. Eleanor continued as if nothing had happened. "Victoria, dear, would you mind reviewing Claire's proposal for the Asian markets? I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on her supply chain innovations." The next 2 hours were excruciating for Victoria, watching her carefully crafted professional image crumble as she realized she was sitting across from not just a housewife, but a business strategist who had systematically outmaneuvered everyone. Later that afternoon, I received a text from Rich. "Working late tonight. Big presentation Monday. Don't wait up." I smiled at my phone, knowing exactly where he was, the office bar with Victoria, who was probably trying to figure out how to warn him without breaking her non-disclosure agreement. Sunday unfolded with domestic precision. I prepared Rich's favorite meal, listened to him rehearse his presentation one final time, and offered the supportive smiles he'd come to expect. It was like watching the final dress rehearsal of a play, where I knew a dramatic plot twist was coming. That evening, as Rich laid out his suit for Monday's board meeting, I received a call from Dr. Sullivan. "Everything's in place," she said without preamble. "The press release is ready, the major shareholders have been quietly briefed, and the security team knows to expect some emotional reactions." I glanced at Rich, who was carefully selecting his power tie, completely unaware that his world was about to change. "It's not just about him anymore," I told Dr. Sullivan. "This is about every woman who's ever been patted on the head and told to stick to household budgets. Every brilliant mind that's been hidden behind a perfectly maintained garden or an immaculate dinner party." Vanessa arrived early Monday morning, ostensibly to share coffee and gossip as she often did. Rich barely acknowledged her presence, too focused on his presentation. As he kissed my cheek and headed out the door, briefcase in hand, Vanessa raised her eyebrow. "Shouldn't you be leaving too? The board meeting starts in an hour." I checked. My watch, a vintage Cartier that had belonged to Eleanor's mother, given to me the day we finalized our agreement. "I think I'll let him get settled first. After all, a good entrance is all about timing." We spent the next 45 minutes reviewing the final details, making sure every document was in place, every signature verified, every legal requirement met. The Westminster Technologies building loomed ahead as my driver pulled up to the private entrance. The security team nodded respectfully. They'd been briefed over the weekend about the changing power structure. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished doors. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A perfectly tailored Chanel suit in charcoal gray, elegant but not flashy. The kind of outfit that commanded respect without demanding attention. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see Rich setting up his presentation, Victoria hovering nearby with barely concealed anxiety. Other board members were settling into their seats, making small talk and checking their phones. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, the picture of calm authority in her signature pearls. "Ready?" Vanessa whispered beside me, clutching her tablet with all our carefully prepared documents. I thought about every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every time I'd been introduced as Rich's wife instead of as my own person. "More than ready," I replied, straightening my shoulders. "It's time to redefine what it means to be just a housewife." The Westminster Technologies boardroom hummed with anticipation as Eleanor called the meeting to order. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sleek mahogany table where 15 years of careful planning was about to unfold. Rich sat halfway down the table, color-coded presentation notes arranged perfectly in front of him, oblivious to the shifting glances between board members who had already been briefed. My entrance was deliberately timed, precisely 3 minutes after Eleanor's opening remarks. The subtle click of my heels against marble flooring drew every eye in the room. Rich's expression shifted from confusion to mild irritation. "Claire? Honey, this is a closed board meeting. Did you forget something in my briefcase?" Eleanor's voice cut through the tension like a perfectly polished blade. "Actually, Richard, Mrs. Morgan is exactly where she needs to be." She gestured to the empty chair at her right hand, a seat traditionally reserved for the company's most powerful shareholder. Victoria, standing by the presentation screen, nearly dropped her laser pointer. "I don't understand," Rich said, his confident facade cracking slightly. "Claire, what's going on? Why aren't you at your garden club meeting?" His nervous laughter echoed in the suddenly silent room. A few board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, avoiding his gaze. I placed my portfolio on the table, the soft thud resonating like a judge's gavel. The garden club was never just about flowers, Richard. Just like those charity galas weren't just about raising money, and those dinner parties weren't just about impressing your colleagues. Each word fell precisely, measured, controlled. While you were climbing the corporate ladder, I was building my own empire. Eleanor stood, commanding the room's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've already been informed, I'm announcing my retirement as CEO of Westminster Technologies. She paused, her next words dropping like bombs in the stillness. I'm also pleased to announce that Claire Morgan, through her investment firm Barrett Global Ventures, has acquired controlling interest in our company. Rich's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger. That's impossible, he sputtered, shuffling through his presentation papers as if they might contain an explanation. Claire doesn't have an investment firm. She's just a housewife? I finished for him, opening my portfolio. Let me show you what this housewife has been doing while planning your dinner parties. Vanessa, right on cue, began distributing comprehensive folders to each board member. These documents outline my vision for Westminster's future, including the restructuring of our Asian operations, a slightly more comprehensive plan than the one you were about to present. Victoria's sharp intake of breath drew attention. She stood frozen by the presentation screen, her own notes hanging limply at her side. But the Asian market proposal? Richard and I have been working on that for months. Indeed, I nodded, pulling up my own presentation. I've reviewed your proposal thoroughly. It has merit, but it barely scratches the surface of what's possible. Your strategy focuses on traditional supply chain optimization, while my plan integrates emerging blockchain technology and artificial intelligence to create a self-evolving distribution network. The next hour was a masterclass in business strategy. I walked the board through 15 years of careful investment, strategic acquisitions, and market analysis. Every questioning glance from the board members turned to understanding, then appreciation, and finally enthusiasm as the scope of my vision became clear. Rich sat silent, his own presentation forgotten, watching as his wife of 15 years systematically demonstrated a business acumen that surpassed his own. His hand shook slightly as he reached for his water glass, wedding ring catching the sunlight, a glinting reminder of the vows we'd made to support each other's dreams. This is insane, he finally interrupted, his voice strained. Claire, you can't seriously expect to run a technology company. You've never even worked in corporate America. You spend your days organizing charity events and tending roses. Dr. Sullivan, who had slipped quietly into the room during my presentation, chose this moment to speak. Those charity events, Richard, connected Claire with some of the most influential investors in the tech industry. And those roses? Each variety was named after a shell company in her investment portfolio. Quite poetic, really. The truth began to dawn in Rich's eyes. Every dinner party conversation he'd casually shared, every business contact he'd introduced me to, every snippet of corporate strategy he'd discussed over breakfast had been carefully cataloged and analyzed. His just a housewife had been conducting corporate reconnaissance from inside their perfectly maintained home. Why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why all the deception? Why not just tell me? I met his gaze steadily. Would you have taken me seriously? The night we met, when you talked about changing the world through technology, I shared my own dreams of building a business empire. You laughed and said I should focus on supporting your career first. The memory hung between us like sharp crystal. So I did, while simultaneously building something of my own. Victoria, who had been inching toward the door, froze when I addressed her directly. Ms. Hayes, your insights on digital marketing have been valuable to the company. I hope you'll bring the same enthusiasm to our new direction, assuming you're comfortable working under female leadership. The boardroom had transformed into an arena where years of underestimation were being systematically dismantled. Each document I presented, each strategy I outlined, each question I answered with precision and authority reinforced a simple truth. I had never been just anything. Eleanor watched it all with the satisfaction of a chess master witnessing a perfectly executed endgame. "I believe," she said, rising to conclude the meeting, "we should take a brief recess before Mrs. Morgan outlines her plans for immediate organizational changes." She emphasized my name with subtle satisfaction. As board members filed out, many pausing to shake my hand or offer congratulations, Rich remained seated, staring at my presentation still glowing on the screen. 15 years of assumptions were crumbling around him. The wife he thought he knew, the power dynamic he'd taken for granted, the future he'd planned, all transformed in a single morning. "The car is waiting to take you home," I said softly, gathering my materials. "We should talk later, after you've had time to process everything." I paused at the door, looking back at my husband, now technically my employee. "Oh, and Richard? Don't worry about dinner. I've arranged for corporate catering to deliver. After all, I have a company to run now." The aftermath of the board meeting rippled through Westminster Technologies like a silent earthquake. I spent the remainder of that day in Eleanor's former office, now my office, fielding calls from investors, arranging meetings with department heads, and watching the business world explode with speculation about the mysterious housewife who'd orchestrated one of the year's most surprising corporate takeovers. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications as financial news networks picked up the story. Headlines flashed across my desktop screen. "Housewife to CEO, the hidden power player of tech. Westminster's surprise succession, a corporate fairy." Tale. Behind the scenes, how Claire Morgan built a tech empire from her kitchen. Vanessa paced the office, monitoring social media reactions and managing press inquiries. "They're calling you the domestic Duchess of Tech," she said, scrolling through her tablet. "The memes are actually quite entertaining. Someone photoshopped you wearing a crown made of USB cables." "What about the shareholders?" I asked, signing another stack of transition documents. The mahogany desk still held traces of Eleanor's presence, a crystal paperweight catching the afternoon sun, casting rainbow prisms across my new business cards. "Stock's up 12% since the announcement," Vanessa replied. "Your reputation as a strategic investor is overshadowing the initial shock. The Asian markets are particularly enthusiastic about your blockchain integration proposal." A soft knock interrupted us. Dr. Sullivan entered, carrying a leather-bound portfolio. "The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning," she announced. "We need to discuss your public narrative. The media loves the housewife angle, but we need to shift the conversation toward your business acumen." I stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there, Rich was probably sitting in his office, coming to terms with his new reality. "No," I said finally. "We don't hide from the housewife narrative. We transform it. Every woman who's been underestimated needs to see that domestic skills and business acumen aren't mutually exclusive." The intercom buzzed, my new executive assistant announcing that the department heads were assembled for our first leadership meeting. I gathered my materials, including a detailed analysis of each department's performance over the past 5 years. Time to show them that running a multinational corporation isn't so different from managing a household budget. Just add a few more zeros. The conference room fell silent as I entered. 12 department heads, predominantly men, watched as I took my place at the head of the table. Richard's empty chair at the far end spoke volumes. He'd called in sick after the morning's revelations. "I've reviewed all of your department's performance metrics," I began, displaying the first slide of my presentation. "Impressive achievements, but I see significant opportunities for optimization. Mr. Phillips, your marketing budget reads like a teenager with their first credit card." Phillips, a silver-haired veteran of corporate politics, bristled visibly. "With all due respect, Mrs. Morgan, marketing a global tech company is slightly more complex than planning dinner parties." "Indeed," I smiled, pulling up a comparison chart. At your last corporate gala, you spent $80,000 on imported flowers and premium liquor to impress potential clients. I hosted a similar event last month for 1/10 of the cost, securing 3 major contracts over home-cooked, appetizers, and local wine. Sometimes authenticity sells better than extravagance. The next 2 hours redefined Westminster's corporate culture. Every challenge to my authority was met with precise data and innovative solutions. By the end, even Phillips was taking notes enthusiastically as I outlined my vision for integrating sustainable practices with profitable growth. Victoria Hayes slipped into the meeting halfway through, trying to be inconspicuous. I acknowledged her with a nod, continuing my presentation. Ms. Hayes, your digital marketing insights will be crucial for our new customer engagement strategy. I'd like you to lead the initiative, assuming you're ready to see me as more than Richard's wife. Evening settled over the city as I finally returned to my office. Eleanor had left a gift on my desk, a framed photo of her own first day as CEO, 4 decades ago. Her handwritten note read, "Welcome to the corner office, dear. Now show them." What a housewife can really do. Vanessa burst in without knocking, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "You need to see this," she said, turning on the office television. Rich was giving an impromptu interview outside our home. "Of course I'm proud of Claire," he was saying, his corporate mask firmly in place. "She's always been supportive of my career, and now I look forward to supporting hers." The reporter pressed him about being caught off guard. "Marriage is full of surprises," he managed, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "He's trying to save face," Dr. Sullivan observed from the doorway. "The question is, what's his next move?" I turned off the television, returning to the stack of documents demanding my attention. "His next move doesn't matter. I'm already 20 steps ahead, just like I've always been." My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Dinner at my house. Tomorrow. Bring your battle plans. And yes, dear, I'd love to try that new quiche recipe you mentioned." A notification popped up on my computer. Someone had leaked photos of Rich and Victoria having drinks late at night, discussing business. Long after the office had closed. The timestamp showed regular occurrences over the past 6 months. "Should we address this?" Vanessa asked, already drafting potential PR responses. I smiled, opening a folder marked Contingency Plans. "Let's just say I didn't become CEO, without considering every possible scenario." Victoria's ambition was always going to be her weakness, just like Richard's underestimation of me was his. The night deepened as we continued working, transforming Westminster Technologies from the inside out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I savored the quiet satisfaction of knowing that just a housewife had orchestrated the corporate coup of the decade. Somewhere in the city, other underestimated women were watching, learning, and perhaps planning their own revolutions. The morning of my first press conference dawned with the kind of pristine clarity that felt almost orchestrated. I stood in my closet, now transformed into a strategic command center, selecting my armor for the day. The Armani suit I chose wasn't just clothing. It was a statement of intent. Its deep navy color suggesting authority, while the subtle feminine cut refused to apologize for my gender. Eleanor's words from our dinner the previous evening echoed in my mind as I fastened my grandmother's pearl necklace. "They'll try to paint you as either a vindictive wife or a corporate raider," she'd warned, pouring aged scotch into crystal tumblers. "Give them a different story entirely." The Westminster Technologies lobby was already buzzing with media when I arrived. Cameras flashed as I walked through the front entrance rather than using the executive elevator, a deliberate choice. My new security team, led by former military intelligence officer Maria Santos, flanked me discreetly. "Mrs. Morgan, how long have you been planning this takeover?" A reporter shouted from the crowd. Another voice cut through. "Did your husband know about your business activities?" The questions flew like arrows, each aimed at reducing my achievement to either marital betrayal or lucky accident. I paused at the podium, surveying the assembled press. In the front row, I spotted Victoria Hayes trying to appear inconspicuous while typing frantically on her phone. Behind her, Richard stood at the back of the room, his expression unreadable. The air crackled with anticipation. "Good morning," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space. "You all came here expecting a story about a housewife who got lucky, or perhaps a tale of revenge against an unsuspecting husband. Instead, I'm going to tell you about market integration, technological innovation, and the future of global commerce." For the next hour, I outlined Westminster's new direction with the same precision I'd once used to plan charity galas. Every question about my domestic role was met with detailed analysis of market trends. Every attempt to sensationalize the personal aspects of my ascension was redirected toward our company's groundbreaking blockchain initiatives. "But surely," a persistent reporter from the Financial Times pressed, "managing a household budget didn't prepare you for corporate finance?" I smiled, pulling up a comparison chart on the screen behind me. "Actually, let's talk about budgets. In the past year, while serving as a consultant under Eleanor's mentorship, I identified cost inefficiencies in our operations that, when corrected, saved the company $43 million. The same principles that helped me trim household expenses without compromising quality apply to corporate spending, just with more zeros involved." Victoria's hand shot up, her expression a mixture of challenge and calculation. "Sources suggest that Richard Morgan's position as VP of Operations might be compromised by this new leadership structure. How do you respond to accusations of personal bias affecting professional decisions?" The room fell silent, waiting for signs of marital drama. Instead, they got a masterclass in corporate leadership. Mr. Morgan's position, like every position at Westminster Technologies, will be evaluated based on performance metrics and contribution to our strategic goals. Personal relationships have no bearing on professional assessments. I met Richard's eyes across the room. "I trust Mr. Morgan agrees that merit should be the only criterion for advancement." Dr. Sullivan, watching from the sidelines, gave me an approving nod as I fielded questions about our upcoming technological innovations. The narrative was shifting exactly as planned, from sensational personal drama to serious business strategy. After the press conference, I returned to find my office transformed. The corporate art had been replaced with framed patents. My patents, filed quietly over the years under my maiden name. Vanessa stood by my desk, grinning. A little reminder, for anyone who questions your qualifications. The afternoon brought a parade of meetings with international partners, each carefully scheduled to demonstrate the breadth of my business relationships. Japanese investors, German technology firms, Indian software developers, connections I'd cultivated during years of social events that were actually strategic networking opportunities. As sunset painted the city skyline in shades of amber, Maria Santos entered with a security report. "Ma'am, we've detected unusual access patterns in the company's servers. Someone's been trying to locate specific financial records. I didn't need to ask who." "Let them look," I replied, signing the last of the day's documents. "Everything they find will tell the same story: methodical planning, legal precision, and irrefutable competence." A knock at my door revealed Richard, looking somehow smaller in his expertly tailored suit. "Can we talk?" he asked, hovering in the doorway like a stranger. "About us? About all of this?" "Of course," I gestured to the visitor's chair. Not the intimate seating area where a wife might have sat, but the formal space where business matters were discussed. "I assume you've reviewed the quarterly projections I sent to all department heads?" He blinked, wrong-footed by my professional tone. "Claire, I'm not here as a department head. I'm here as your husband. We need to discuss how this affects our marriage." Interesting, I replied, pulling out a file. Because I have concerns about both relationships. Your department's performance metrics have been declining for the past 2 quarters, showing a pattern of inconsistent decision-making and questionable resource allocation. And your late-night strategy sessions with Victoria Hayes suggest similar issues with prioritization on a personal level. Richard's face flushed. You've been monitoring my work meetings? I've been monitoring everything, Richard. That's what CEOs do. I softened my tone slightly. And what wives do when they notice their husbands coming home with unfamiliar perfume on their collar. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 15 years of assumptions and underestimations. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to. I didn't know you were capable of all this. That's exactly the problem, I replied, standing to signal the end of our meeting. You never bothered to find out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a video conference with our European board members. We can discuss your department's performance review next week, though you might want to update your resume in the meantime. As Richard left, Vanessa entered with fresh coffee and a tablet displaying Westminster's soaring stock prices. The market loves you, she announced, especially after that press conference. They're calling you the queen of corporate chess now. I smiled, picking up my grandmother's pearls that had watched over my transformation from corporate wife to corporate leader. Chess is exactly right, I mused. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board, but only if you know how to play the game. 2 weeks into my role as CEO, I discovered that running a technology empire required a different kind of precision than maintaining a perfect household. The corporate battlefield demanded strategies that went beyond the subtle manipulations of dinner party seating arrangements. Each morning brought new challenges, new opportunities to prove that my years of quiet observation had prepared me for this moment. My executive assistant, Thomas, appeared at my office door with the morning briefing. The development team in Singapore is waiting for your video call. The quarterly reports need your signature, and... He hesitated. Mr. Morgan has requested an urgent meeting regarding his department's audit. I glanced at my carefully organized schedule, another skill transferred from years of managing household calendars. Schedule Richard for 4 o'clock. Let him wait a bit. Anticipation builds character. The subtle smile Thomas tried to hide told me the office gossip networks were already buzzing with stories of how the former housewife was reshaping Westminster's corporate culture. The Singapore team's presentation revealed promising developments in our artificial intelligence division. As they walked through complex algorithms and neural network architectures, I felt a quiet satisfaction. My late-night study sessions, disguised as insomnia to Richard, had prepared me well for these technical discussions. Mrs. Morgan, the lead developer interjected, your suggestions about incorporating traditional decision-making patterns into the AI's learning protocols. They're revolutionary. How did you develop this insight? Years of observing human behavior at corporate events, I replied. Every networking opportunity was a study in decision-making patterns. Now we're teaching machines what I learned serving cocktails to overconfident executives. Midday brought lunch with Eleanor at her private club, an elegant establishment where business deals were crafted over perfectly poached salmon. The board is impressed, she mentioned, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin. Your handling of the Asian market expansion has exceeded expectations. I had an excellent teacher, I smiled, thinking of our countless strategy sessions disguised as garden club meetings. Though some still struggle with the transition, Phillips from marketing submitted his resignation this morning. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with understanding. Couldn't handle reporting to a woman who once planned his daughter's wedding? She signed the lunch bill with a flourish. His replacement should be someone unexpected, someone they've underestimated. I already had a candidate in mind, Jennifer Chen, a brilliant strategist who'd been relegated to organizing corporate events. Like me, she'd use that position to build an impressive network of contacts while being dismissed as merely decorative. The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Victoria Hayes, her designer outfit somehow less pristine than usual. "Mrs. Morgan," she began, perching uncertainly on the visitor's chair, "I wanted to discuss the restructuring of the operations department." "You mean the department currently headed by my husband?" I kept my tone neutral, watching her squirm. "The same husband you've been meeting privately to discuss strategy?" Victoria's composure cracked slightly. Those meetings were purely professional. Richard, Mr. Morgan, needed support during the transition. Indeed. I pulled up a series of surveillance photos on my tablet. Support that required intimate dinners and late-night hotel meetings? Victoria's face paled as I continued. "I'm not interested in your personal choices, Ms. Hayes. I am, however, very interested in the confidential documents you tried to access after hours." "I can explain," she started, but I held up a hand. "No need. Your ambition is admirable if misguided. In fact, I have a proposition for you." I outlined my plan, a transfer to our Tokyo office, heading up a new division. "Your talents are wasted playing corporate seductress. Time to decide who you really want to be." By 4 o'clock, Richard appeared for his scheduled meeting. The contrast between the confident executive who once patronized my domestic duties and the uncertain man before me was striking. "The audit findings," he began, sliding a folder across my desk. "There are some discrepancies I can explain." "The discrepancies aren't the issue, Richard." I opened the folder, revealing highlighted sections. "The issue is the pattern they expose. Decisions made for personal gain rather than company benefit. Resources allocated based on favoritism rather than merit." "You're going to fire me," he stated flatly. "Your own husband." "No, Richard. I'm offering you a choice." I presented him with 2 documents: resignation with a generous severance package, or transfer to our subsidiary in Minneapolis. A fresh start away from complicated relationships. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the papers. "All those years, watching me work, listening to my stories, you were learning, weren't you? Building your knowledge while I thought you were just being supportive." "I was being supportive," I corrected. "Supporting my own dreams while you mistook patience for subservience." A message flashed on my screen, the Tokyo office confirming Victoria's transfer. "You never wondered why I hosted so many tech industry events? Why our garden parties always included key investors?" The realization dawned in his eyes. "The koi pond installation last summer, when you insisted on that specific contractor." "The CEO of Neural Dynamics," I nodded. "He provided vital insights into artificial intelligence applications while admiring my water lilies. Multitasking is essential in both homemaking and corporate leadership." As Richard left, clutching the resignation papers, Vanessa entered with evening updates. "Tokyo's confirmed, Minneapolis is prepared, and the AI team has incorporated your suggested modifications. Also, Jennifer Chen accepted the marketing director position." I stood by the window, watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled. The same view Richard had enjoyed for years, now offering a different perspective. "Schedule a company-wide town hall for next week," I instructed. "It's time to announce our global restructuring." "Already done," Vanessa smiled. "Though you might want to move it up a day. The charity gala you organized months ago is next Thursday." "Keep it as scheduled," I decided. "Some of our best business deals have been made over champagne and canapes. Old habits die hard." My phone buzzed with a message from Eleanor. "Dinner at my place. Bring that strategic mind of yours, and maybe that amazing soufflé recipe." The evening settled into a new rhythm, so different from my previous life, yet somehow familiar. The skills that had made me an excellent corporate wife, attention to detail, strategic thinking, careful observation, now served a different purpose. As I reviewed the next day's schedule, I realized that running a multinational corporation wasn't so different from running a household. Both required patience, precision, and the ability to see opportunities where others saw limitations. A final email arrived from Victoria, accepting the Tokyo position. Her signature line already updated to reflect her new role. Another piece moved strategically across the corporate chessboard, another player realizing that underestimating women was a costly mistake in any game. The charity gala that Thursday evening marked a turning point in more ways than one. Standing on the terrace of the Metropolitan Art Museum, watching the city's elite mingle beneath crystal chandeliers, I realized that my transformation had sparked something larger than myself. Women kept approaching me throughout the evening, their stories pouring out in quiet conversations by the champagne fountain or in whispered confidences beside priceless sculptures. A neurosurgeon's wife revealed her secret research into revolutionary medical devices. An ambassador's spouse shared her unofficial diplomatic negotiations that had prevented 3 international incidents. A noted philanthropist's partner outlined her shadow network of women-led investment groups. Each had been dismissed as just a wife. Each had used that dismissal as cover for their own ambitions. Eleanor materialized at my elbow as I finished, discussing quantum computing applications with a semiconductor heiress. "You've started something, my dear," she murmured, accepting a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "They're calling it the Westminster effect, powerful women emerging from the shadows of their husbands' careers." Dr. Sullivan joined our conversation, her academic credentials now complemented by her role as Westminster's new chief strategy officer. The press has picked up on it too. 3 major business magazines are requesting profiles on our female executives who were discovered during your reorganization. Jennifer Chen, our new marketing director, approached with a tablet, displaying real-time social media analytics. The hashtag #JAR Not Just a Wife is trending globally. Women are sharing their hidden achievements, their secret qualifications, their carefully concealed ambitions. My phone buzzed with a notification. Richard had officially accepted the Minneapolis transfer. Another message followed immediately. Victoria's arrival in Tokyo had already resulted in 2 major partnership deals. The pieces were falling into place, but the game had evolved beyond corporate strategy. "We need to formalize this," I declared, leading my impromptu advisory council to a private corner of the terrace. Not just at Westminster, but across industries. A network for women who've been hiding their light under the proverbial bushel of domestic expectations. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with recognition. The Garden Club model, but global. Using social events as cover for serious business and mentorship. Exactly, I nodded, already envisioning the structure. Every charity lunch becomes a venture capital meeting. Every fashion show transforms into a tech symposium. Every spa day doubles as a strategy session. By midnight, Operation Penelope was born, named after the mythical queen who wove her own plans while others underestimated her. Dr. Sullivan would head the educational component, identifying brilliant women trapped in supporting roles and providing them with resources to emerge. Jennifer would craft the public narrative, transforming the perception of corporate spouses from accessories to assets. The next morning, my executive team gathered in the Westminster conference room, now redesigned to eliminate the traditional power dynamics of corporate architecture. The round table was my first change as CEO. No head position, no hierarchical seating. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "we're expanding our mission. Westminster Technologies will spearhead an initiative to identify and promote underutilized talent, particularly among those who've been dismissed as mere supporters of others' success." Thomas appeared with urgent news. Our stock had jumped. Another 15 points following the announcement of our new diversity and talent development program. The market was responding to innovation, not just in technology, but in corporate culture. Maria Santos, my head of security, shared intelligence on similar movements starting in other companies. "It's spreading organically," she reported. Women, in Silicon Valley, on Wall Street, in international conglomerates, They're stepping out of the shadows. Vanessa coordinated with our legal team to structure the initiative properly. We're establishing the Westminster Foundation, she explained, a separate entity focused on identifying and developing hidden talent. The tax benefits alone will offset the initial investment. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor, Victoria's predecessor from the Tokyo office. Mrs. Morgan, he bowed. Slightly. Your restructuring of our Asian operations is unprecedented, but the results speak for themselves. Ms. Hayes's insights into cultural integration have already improved our market penetration. I smiled, remembering Victoria's transformation from corporate climber to genuine leader. Sometimes people rise to the level of our expectations rather than falling to the level of our assumptions. A text message from Richard interrupted my evening review of quarterly projections. Minneapolis is cold, but the perspective is clear up here. I understand now what I failed to see before. Thank you for the wake-up call. Eleanor's daily check-in came via video call, her face glowing with satisfaction. The Westminster effect has reached Europe. 3 major companies have announced initiatives to evaluate spousal talent pools. You've started a revolution in heels, my dear. The revolution wasn't just in corporate offices. Every day brought new stories. A diplomat's wife who'd been secretly arbitrating international disputes. A celebrity's spouse who'd developed revolutionary green energy solutions. A politician's partner who'd created an algorithm for predicting economic trends. As I prepared for bed that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror. No longer just Claire Morgan, corporate wife, but Claire Morgan, catalyst for change. The same woman who'd planned perfect dinner parties now planned corporate takeovers. The hands that had arranged flowers now arranged billion-dollar deals. My phone lit up with a final message for the day, a photo from the Tokyo office showing Victoria leading an all-night strategy session, her designer clothes replaced by practical business attire, her expression focused and genuine. Another transformation. Another butterfly emerging from the chrysalis of underestimation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to shatter expectations. But tonight, looking out over the city that had witnessed my own metamorphosis, I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere, in homes and offices across the globe, other women were preparing to step out of the shadows, to transform their own just-a-wife stories into legends of empowerment and achievement. The anonymous email arrived at midnight, its contents spreading through financial networks like wildfire. Westminster Technologies CEO under investigation, the hidden truth behind Claire Morgan's rise to power. Within hours, market analysts were dissecting every aspect of my corporate ascension, searching for signs of manipulation or fraud. I stood in my office at dawn, watching financial news channels splash speculation across their screens. The stock had dropped 12 points in pre-market trading. Thomas rushed in with a stack of urgent messages from board members, investors, and reporters. "They're claiming you manipulated company records," he reported, his usual calm demeanor, slightly ruffled. "Someone leaked documents suggesting irregular transactions during your years of silent acquisition." Maria Santos appeared with her security team's preliminary findings. The leak originated from a private server in Minneapolis. Her meaningful look confirmed my suspicions. Richard might have accepted his transfer, but he hadn't accepted defeat. "Mrs. Morgan," Jennifer Chen entered with social media analytics. "The hashtag #WireWestminsterGate is gaining traction. Traditional media is picking up allegations of corporate espionage and insider trading." I sat at my desk, fingering my grandmother's pearls. "Contact Eleanor and Dr. Sullivan. It's time to open the sealed records." My security team exchanged glances. They knew about the vault, but not its contents. Within an hour, my crisis team assembled in the conference room. Eleanor arrived with a vintage Halliburton briefcase, its contents accumulated over decades of corporate warfare. Dr. Sullivan brought a hard drive containing 15 years of meticulously documented transactions. They think they've caught the housewife in amateur hour, Eleanor mused, spreading documents across the table. Show them what professional really means. The first counterstrike came from our legal team. Every transaction I'd made had been vetted by top financial firms. Every share purchase was documented with pristine precision. The irregular transactions our opponents flagged, part of a sophisticated anti-fraud system Eleanor had designed decades ago. Victoria called from Tokyo, her voice tight with concern. Claire, the Asian markets are nervous. What's our strategy? Release the Zhang portfolio, I instructed. All of it. Victoria gasped. The Zhang documents detailed how Westminster's previous management had nearly tanked the company through reckless expansion. My quiet acquisition had actually saved thousands of jobs. By midday, a new narrative emerged. Financial analysts discovered that my supposed corporate espionage was actually a brilliantly orchestrated rescue operation. The suspicious pattern of investments had protected Westminster from 3 potential hostile takeovers. Mrs. Morgan, Thomas interrupted my strategy session. Mr. Phillips is on every major business channel, claiming you blackmailed him into resignation. I smiled, opening a folder marked Garden Party Protocols. Inside were photographs, recordings, and documents from every corporate event I'd hosted. Release the Phillips files, I instructed Jennifer. All of them. Within hours, Phillips's credibility crumbled. Security footage showed him discussing insider trading over my carefully prepared canapés. His resignation wasn't blackmail. It was a courtesy I'd extended to avoid prosecution. Richard's involvement in the smear campaign backfired spectacularly. His desperate attempt to undermine me revealed his own ethical breaches. The Minneapolis office's audit turned up evidence of systematic favoritism and misallocation of resources under his management. Your husband underestimated you until the end, Eleanor observed, watching the stock price recover and climb. He never realized that every dinner party conversation was recorded, every casual business discussion documented. Dr. Sullivan's research team released their analysis of Westminster's performance since my takeover. Efficiency up 40%. Innovation metrics doubled. Employee satisfaction at record highs. The numbers told a story of competence, not conspiracy. A message from Vanessa lit up my phone. You need to see this. She forwarded a video clip of Victoria addressing the Tokyo Stock Exchange. My former rival was defending not just Westminster's integrity, but the capability of underestimated women everywhere. I once thought power came from pushing others down, Victoria declared to the assembled financial elite. Claire Morgan showed me it comes from lifting others up. The Westminster Foundation's secure server pinged with hundreds of new applications, women emerging from the shadows of their powerful husbands, ready to reveal their own hidden talents. Each application came with documentation as meticulous as my own. They learned from your example, Dr. Sullivan noted, reviewing the files. Every dinner party, every charity event, every social gathering, they were all building their own evidence vaults. As evening approached, Maria's team tracked the source of the original attack. A network of traditional corporate leaders, threatened by the rising tide of female executives, had orchestrated the smear campaign. Their clumsy attempt at character assassination revealed their own obsolescence. Release the final protocol, I instructed my team. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. She knew what that meant. Years ago, we'd prepared for this exact scenario, compiling evidence of systemic discrimination and suppression of talent across multiple industries. The information cascade was devastating. Companies that had participated in the attack found their own practices under scrutiny. Board members who had questioned my qualifications faced questions about their own appointments. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. I never stood a chance, did I? You were always 20 steps ahead. 30 steps, actually, I replied. You taught me that at our first dinner, when you explained corporate strategy over dessert. I was taking notes. Jennifer rushed in with breaking news. Westminster's stock had closed at an all-time high. The market had spoken. Competence trumped gender. Results outweighed prejudice. Mrs. Morgan, Thomas appeared with one final update. The SEC has reviewed all documentation and found no irregularities. They're issuing a statement clearing Westminster of all allegations. I stood at my office window, watching the city lights blink on. The same view Richard had enjoyed while plotting his corporate ambitions, now witnessing the triumph of the wife he'd dismissed. Eleanor joined me, her reflection in the glass carrying decades of similar battles. "You know they'll try again," she warned. "The old guard never yields easily." "Let them try," I smiled, adjusting my grandmother's pearls. I didn't spend 15 years planning dinner parties without learning how to handle unwanted guests. In the conference room, my team was already preparing for tomorrow. The Westminster Effect had evolved from a hashtag into a movement. Women across the globe were documenting their contributions, preparing their evidence, readying themselves to step into the light. The night spread its blanket over the city as I reviewed one final document, the blueprint for our next phase. The corporate world had tried to bury the housewife. Instead, they'd unleashed a revolution in heels and pearls, armed with spreadsheets and strategies, backed by years of careful documentation. "Send tomorrow's memo," I instructed Thomas. Subject line: "Welcome to the real corporate evolution." 3 months after the failed smear campaign, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Richard. The message arrived during my morning briefing, causing me to pause mid-discussion about our Asian market expansion. The Minneapolis winter had apparently given him time to reflect, his message suggesting a different tone than his previous communications. We agreed to meet at Salvatore's, a small Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date 16 years ago. I chose my outfit carefully, not the power suits of the corporate world, but a simple blue dress that reminded me of simpler times. Some battles require armor, others need humanity. The restaurant hadn't changed much. Same checkered tablecloths, same vintage Chianti bottles lining the walls, same elderly Salvatore greeting guests at the door. Richard was already seated at our old corner table, looking somehow both familiar and foreign in his casual sweater. "You look well," he said, standing as I approached. The formality felt strange after 15 years of marriage. Minneapolis agrees with me, the distance. It provides clarity. I ordered the mushroom risotto, the same dish I'd chosen on our first date. Richard smiled at the memory. "You were explaining market derivatives to me that night. I thought you were just being polite, showing interest in my work." "I was never just being polite, Richard." The words carried no bitterness now, just truth. Every conversation was real, every interest genuine. You just couldn't see past your own assumptions. Our appetizers arrived, bruschetta with fresh tomatoes and basil. Richard stared at his plate for a moment before speaking. "I found your old business school thesis in our storage unit. The integration of domestic economic principles in corporate strategy. You were already mapping out your path while I was bragging about my first promotion." The conversation flowed easier after that, like wine from Salvatore's carefully curated cellar. Richard shared stories about his new role in Minneapolis, heading a smaller division, but doing the work himself instead of relying on others. I told him about the Westminster Foundation's latest initiatives, watching understanding dawn in his eyes. "The garden club meetings," he mused, "they weren't about roses at all, were they?" "The roses were real," I corrected him. "Everything was real. Richard, the dinners I cooked, the parties I planned, the support I gave you, none of that was fake. I just refused to be limited by your perception of me." Our main courses arrived as Richard pulled out a folder. "I've been doing my own documentation lately, learning from your example." Inside were performance reports, strategy proposals, and innovation metrics from his division. Real work, Thoughtful analysis, no cutting corners or relying on charm. You've grown, I observed, reviewing his papers. Minneapolis has been good for you. Failure is an excellent teacher, he admitted. Watching everything I thought I knew collapse. It forces you to rebuild from scratch, without the crutches of privilege and presumption. The afternoon light filtered through Salvatore's stained glass windows, casting patterns across our table. In that gentle illumination, we weren't CEO and department head, weren't even husband and wife. We were simply two people finding their way to understanding. Victoria sends her regards, I mentioned, watching his reaction. The lack of response told its own story. She's revolutionizing our Asian operations. Turns out ambition is more productive when it's not tied to manipulation. Richard nodded, a rueful smile playing at his lips. I got played at my own game, didn't I? While I was pursuing surface-level power, you were building something real. Salvatore brought us espresso, the same blend he'd served 16 years. Ego. The familiar aroma carried memories of beginnings, of potential, of dreams not yet tarnished by assumptions and prejudice. I never apologized properly, Richard said, stirring his coffee. Not just for the recent unpleasantness, but for years of underestimation, for making you feel like you had to hide your brilliance. I didn't hide it, I corrected him gently. I employed it strategically. Every dinner party conversation, every social event, every charity gala, they were all opportunities to learn, to connect, to build. You saw limitations where I saw possibilities. The afternoon stretched on as we talked about the future. Richard shared his plans for innovating within his division, ideas that showed genuine thought rather than quick-fix solutions. I outlined the Westminster Foundation's expanding influence, watching him truly listen perhaps for the first time. You know, he mused, I keep thinking about that last dinner party we hosted together. Remember the quantum computing professor who spent an hour talking about his research? I smiled, remembering that evening clearly. Dr. Whitman. His insights helped shape our current AI integration protocols. While I was networking for my career, you were building an empire. Richard shook his head in amazement. Every social interaction had multiple layers of purpose. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the restaurant's windows, we reached a new understanding. Not reconciliation in the traditional sense. Too much had changed for that. But something more valuable. Mutual respect. The Minneapolis division has potential, I mentioned casually. Our market analysis suggests room for significant expansion in the Midwest tech corridor. Richard sat straighter, understanding the opportunity being presented. I've been developing some proposals. Real ones this time, based on solid research and sustainable growth models. Send them to Jennifer Chen in marketing. If they're viable, we'll discuss resource allocation. The professional courtesy felt right, acknowledging his potential while maintaining clear boundaries. As we prepared to leave, Salvatore brought out a bottle of the same wine we'd shared on our first date. On the house, he insisted, his aged eyes twinkling with understanding. Some things change, some stay the same, but all things must grow. Richard insisted on paying the bill, not as a power play, but as a gesture of respect. Outside, as the evening air carried hints of approaching autumn, we faced each other as equals for perhaps the first time. Thank you, he said simply, for showing me what real strength looks like, what real success means. I touched my grandmother's pearls, a habit that had become almost totemic. Just remember, Richard, behind every just a housewife, might be another Claire Morgan, watching, learning, and preparing to reshape the world. As my driver pulled up, Richard handed me one final document, his resignation from the Minneapolis division. I'm starting over, he explained. Building something of my own, the right way this time. No shortcuts, no manipulation, no riding on others' coattails. The gesture felt like closing a chapter while opening a new one. Not an ending, but an evolution. As my car pulled away, I watched Richard in the rearview mirror. A man finally learning to stand on his own merits, rather than on the diminishment of others. My phone buzzed with messages from the office. New opportunities, emerging challenges, the constant pulse of corporate life. But for a moment, I let myself appreciate the journey that had brought me here. From corporate wife to corporate leader, from underestimated to unstoppable. Spring arrived with a wave of transformations across the corporate landscape. The Westminster Foundation's first annual conference filled the grand ballroom of the Renaissance Hotel with faces that had once been relegated to the background of power. Former corporate wives now stood at podiums, presenting breakthrough, innovations in technology, finance, and sustainable development. Standing at the central podium, surveying the assembled crowd, I felt the weight of change in the air. Eleanor sat in the front row, her silver hair gleaming under the crystal chandeliers, a proud smile playing at her lips. Beside her, Dr. Sullivan reviewed presentation notes with a group of women who had emerged from their own chrysalis of underestimation. "Welcome to the future of innovation," I began, my voice carrying across the hushed room. 1 year ago, many of us were known simply as someone's wife. Today, we're known by our achievements, our innovations, and our vision. The presentations that followed shattered every stereotype about domestic limitations. Margaret Wu, once known only as a diplomat's spouse, unveiled a revolutionary blockchain system for international aid distribution. Patricia Alvarez, previously dismissed as a senator's wife, demonstrated quantum computing applications that had the tech world buzzing. Jennifer Chen took the stage to present our global impact metrics. The Westminster effect has directly influenced the promotion of over 500 previously overlooked executives worldwide. Market analysis shows companies with integrated leadership, combining traditional corporate experience with previously hidden talent, outperforming their competitors by an average of 28%. Victoria's video feed from Tokyo showed similar transformations across Asian markets. "We're seeing a fundamental shift in corporate culture," she reported. "The assumption that domestic roles preclude business acumen is crumbling. Our latest partnership agreements specifically seek out executives with diverse life experiences." During the lunch break, I found myself in conversation with Sophia Patel, once known simply as a real estate mogul's wife. My sustainable energy project was sitting in a folder marked "Household Expenses" for 12 years, she confided. Now it's powering 3 cities. Maria Santos appeared with security updates that reflected our changing world. Corporate espionage. Attempts have dropped 60%, she reported. Apparently, transparent leadership and diverse perspectives make companies more resilient against traditional manipulation tactics. The afternoon sessions focused on mentorship and expansion. Dr. Sullivan introduced the Foundation's educational initiative, a global program identifying and supporting hidden talent. "We're not just changing corporate leadership," she explained. "We're redefining the very nature of power and influence." Eleanor took the stage to announce the establishment of the Morgan Grant, a fund specifically dedicated to developing innovations from overlooked sources. Every dinner party conversation could contain the next technological breakthrough, she declared. Every school fundraiser might be hiding the next economic revolution. As the day progressed, success stories filled the air like confetti. A weak neurosurgeon's wife who had quietly developed an AI diagnostic system while organizing medical conferences. A judge's spouse who had created a groundbreaking legal database between PTA meetings. Each story reinforced a simple truth. Domestic roles and professional excellence were never mutually exclusive. Thomas arrived with news from Westminster's board meeting. Our stock had hit another record high, driven by a series of innovations emerging from our newly diversified leadership. The market was learning what I had known all along. Underestimating talent based on social roles was a costly mistake. Near the end of the conference, a young woman approached me clutching a worn notebook. "My husband calls me his little homemaker," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I've been developing a quantum encryption protocol between cooking dinners and planning birthday parties." I recognized the look in her eyes, the same fire I had hidden behind perfect dinner parties and immaculate table settings. Opening my tablet, I pulled up our foundation's secure server. "Tell me more about this encryption protocol." The conference's closing ceremony featured a surprise announcement. The Westminster Foundation was launching a global network of innovation hubs, spaces where hidden talent could emerge and develop. Each hub would combine state-of-the-art technology with practical support for those balancing domestic and professional roles. "The future of innovation doesn't wear a single uniform," I declared to the assembled crowd. "It doesn't follow a traditional path. It might be wearing an apron while coding quantum algorithms. It might be planning a school bake sale while revolutionizing sustainable energy. The only limit to human potential is our willingness to recognize it." As the evening wound down, Eleanor and I stood on the hotel's terrace, watching the city lights twinkle like stars fallen to earth. "You've started something remarkable," she mused, sipping champagne. "This goes beyond corporate leadership. You're changing how society values contribution and capability." My phone buzzed with a message from Richard. He had launched his own consulting firm, specializing in identifying overlooked talent in traditional corporate structures. His latest client? A major tech company struggling to innovate with their homogeneous leadership team. Victoria's final report from Tokyo came through. 3 more companies had adopted our integrated leadership model. The Westminster effect was becoming a global standard for corporate evolution. As the last attendees departed, carrying new possibilities, with them like precious cargo, I touched my grandmother's pearls, a habit that had become symbolic of transformation. These same pearls had witnessed countless dinner parties where my insights were ignored. Now they witnessed a revolution in how talent and capability were recognized. Dr. Sullivan joined us on the terrace, carrying preliminary data from the conference. "We've received over 2,000 applications for the Morgan Grant," she reported. "Each one represents a hidden innovation, a suppressed dream, a potential breakthrough." Looking out over the city, I thought about all the other women out there, watching, waiting, preparing. Every perfectly hosted dinner party might be concealing a business strategy. Every impeccably organized charity gala might be nurturing a technological innovation. The night air carried whispers of change, of possibility, of revolution wrapped in respectability. Tomorrow, somewhere, another underestimated spouse would read about the Westminster effect and recognize her own potential. Another hidden talent would emerge from the shadows of domestic expectations. My phone lit up with one final message. The conference hashtag was trending globally. The world was watching, learning, understanding that power doesn't always wear a business suit. That brilliance doesn't conform to traditional expectations. "Shall we begin planning next year's conference?" Eleanor asked, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Oh, I started planning that 6 months ago," I replied, returning her smile. Some habits of preparation never change. They just find new purpose. 2 years after that fateful company Christmas party, I stood in the grand atrium of the newly inaugurated Westminster Innovation Center. The space buzzed with energy as women from across the globe gathered for our technology showcase. Above us, a massive digital display tracked real-time innovations emerging from our global network of talent hubs. Eleanor joined me by the central fountain, its water dancing in precisely engineered patterns, designed by a former soccer mom who'd been secretly developing fluid dynamics algorithms between driving kids to practice. "Look at what you've built," Eleanor said, gesturing to the assembled crowd. "This is so much more than corporate success." The Innovation Center had transformed the traditional office model. Instead of rigid hierarchies and closed doors, we'd created flexible spaces that adapted to different needs. A state-of-the-art childcare facility occupied one wing, allowing parents to balance family and innovation. The research labs featured adjustable hours, acknowledging that breakthrough ideas don't always conform to 9-to-5 schedules. Victoria arrived from Tokyo for the showcase, now heading our entire Asian division. The corporate climber who had once dismissed me as just a housewife had become one of our strongest advocates for hidden talent. The Japanese market has fully embraced the integrated leadership model, she reported. Our latest quantum computing project is being led by a woman who developed her theories while managing her family's ramen shop. Dr. Sullivan's education initiative had expanded beyond our wildest expectations. We've identified potential breakthrough, innovations in everything from artificial intelligence to climate change solutions, she explained, leading me through the showcase, all from people who were previously overlooked because of their domestic roles. A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Richard had arrived with his new wife, Sarah, a brilliant mathematician he'd met through his consulting work. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who had once dismissed his wife's capabilities now specialized in helping companies identify hidden talent. Claire, he greeted me warmly, professional respect having replaced our personal history. Sarah's quantum encryption team would like to collaborate with Westminster's research division. Her algorithms are revolutionary. Sarah, wearing a laboratory coat over her elegant dress, lit up with enthusiasm. I developed the initial concept while planning our wedding, she admitted. Richard recognized its potential immediately. He's learned a lot about not underestimating women. The afternoon's presentations showcased the breadth of innovation we'd unleashed. A former homemaker demonstrated nanobots that could clean ocean pollution. A grandmother who'd been just a babysitter revealed breakthrough work in artificial neural networks. Each presenter wore a string of pearls. It had become our symbol, a reminder that power often hides behind conventional facades. Jennifer Chen took the stage to present our global impact report. The Westminster effect had evolved into a recognized economic phenomenon. Companies that embraced our integrated leadership model showed unprecedented growth. Markets that had previously ignored domestic talent were now actively recruiting from our network. Maria Santos's security team had expanded their mission. Beyond protecting our innovations, they now specialized in identifying and nurturing talent in unexpected places. Last week, we discovered a revolutionary green energy concept hidden in a family recipe book, she reported. The chemical formulas were disguised as ingredient lists. As evening approached, I found myself in Eleanor's old office, now a historical display chronicling the evolution of women's roles in corporate leadership. My old portfolio sat in a glass case, alongside the dinner party plans that had concealed strategic acquisitions. Thomas appeared with an urgent update. Our stock had just hit another record high following the announcement of a breakthrough in quantum computing, developed by a team of scientists who had all emerged from traditional domestic roles. "Mrs. Morgan," he said, his usual professional demeanor softening, "there's someone here you should meet." He led me to the atrium where a young girl waited, clutching a notebook covered in complex equations. "My mom says you'll understand," she said, opening the notebook to reveal advanced theoretical physics alongside homework assignments. "She says you know what it's like to be more than what people see." I recognized her mother, one of our quantum research leads who'd started as a part-time consultant while managing her family's schedule. Together, mother and daughter were revolutionizing our understanding of particle physics. The showcase concluded with a ceremony that felt more like a celebration of human potential than a corporate event. Women who had once hidden their brilliance behind domestic roles now stood proudly in the spotlight. Their innovations weren't just changing technology. They were transforming society's understanding of capability and contribution. Eleanor took the stage one final time, her presence commanding as ever. 2 years ago, Claire Morgan showed us that power doesn't always wear a business suit, that brilliance doesn't conform to traditional expectations. Today, we're not just celebrating innovations in technology. We're celebrating the innovation of perspective. As the evening wound down, I found myself back in the atrium, watching the fountain's choreographed waters. My reflection showed a woman transformed, yet fundamentally unchanged. The same attention to detail that had made me an excellent hostess now made me an exceptional CEO. The strategic thinking that had planned perfect dinner parties now planned corporate expansions. Victoria joined me, her designer clothes replaced by practical business attire. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The simplicity of being underestimated?" I touched my grandmother's pearls, thinking of all the women out there still hiding their light. "Being underestimated was never simple," I replied. "It was always a complex dance of observation, preparation, and patience. Now we're just dancing in the open." The digital display above us flashed with new innovations emerging. From our global network, each breakthrough represented someone who had refused to be limited by others' perceptions. Each success story encouraged another hidden talent to step forward. As night fell over the Innovation Center, its windows glowing with possibility, I thought about that company Christmas party where my husband had dismissed me as just a housewife. That moment of public diminishment had sparked a movement that now spanned continents. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new talents emerging. From unexpected places, new opportunities to shatter assumptions. But tonight, watching the next generation of innovators share their dreams openly, I understood that success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving possibility right. The Westminster effect had become more than a corporate phenomenon. It was a reminder that brilliance doesn't need permission to shine, that power doesn't need traditional validation to transform the world. Sometimes, the most revolutionary acts wear pearls and smile politely while changing everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.